Well, happy, beautiful, amazing day. Dr. Bobrakowski here, wellness transformation expert, looking at this Eat Lancet Commission. This group is trying to tell the world, hey, we know how to eat, we know how you should eat, and we're going to make some recommendations for you. Well, how does the public feel about the Lancet? How is their trust in medicine now? Consider it was pretty high before the pandemic, dropped down to 29% during the pandemic. Now, I might ask, who were those 29%? Who was trusting doctors that clearly were not acting in patients' best interest? And has that trust come back? Maybe not. Lancet Infectious Disease published this month, they show this baby on this cover and this vaccine needle as if vaccines are just the greatest thing ever. I've got a YouTube video that looks at the real stats on that. But reality is, I asked AI, and I'm encouraging you to ask AI, what's the probability of a healthy individual dying of any of the vaccine preventable diseases in the US this year or any given year? And the answer is it's essentially zero. You'll have a lot more kids struck by lightning to death than would die from a vaccine preventable illness. So we might ask, why are they pushing this? What's the value? Is there a downside to vaccines? Plenty of people are saying that there is. Now we start looking at what are they recommending for food. I won't necessarily get into how they came up with it, but reality is if you compare the American diet in 1825, 200 years ago, and you look and see, okay, how long did presidents live? What was their diet like? And understand, if you got to be 5, there was a huge probability that you were going to get to somewhere between 70 and 80. And the first 10 presidents' average age of death was 78.5. Now, why were kids dying in childhood? Well, you know what? Doctors didn't know what they were doing. Ignaz Semmelweis looked that up. They would do autopsies and then, without washing their hands, go deliver a baby. And you wonder why there were problems there. In fact, Semmelweis's question was, are doctors killing babies? And he concluded that they were. Are doctors still killing people today? Yeah, it might not be their intent, but they're in a very broken system. Iatrogenic or doctor-caused death is the number 3 cause of death in the US today. And by the way, some of these procedures could show up to be very, very, very serious causes of death. So I broke that plate down a little bit further, and I'm actually going to expand on it here. So you start looking and going, okay, they want a big chunk of grains. Well, grains were a part of the 1825 diet. In fact, a major part of it, but it was mostly corn, followed by barley, followed by rye. And by the way, none of it was genetically modified. They didn't use herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. Meat, 28%, over 1/4 of the calories. They're wanting to cut that down to 11%. What was the meat like back then? How about grass-fed, organic, no antibiotics, no hormones? It wasn't a problem. Are we doing that with meat today? It's available, but you actually have to look for it. What about dairy? Dairy was only 4%. I'm imagining it was organic. In fact, I know it was because there was no other choice back then. But it was also grass-fed and it was raw, and that's going to be pretty healthy. Fruits were a little bit, vegetables were a little bit, eggs, nuts, and seeds, legumes, that about wrapped it up. Well, where are they going today? Still a lot of grains, but most of these are genetically modified with lots of gluten, less meat, which may be the perfect food, certainly the most nutrient dense. More fruits, hey, I'm okay with that. But again, they're genetically modified and sprayed with horrible pesticides. So the grains back, again, 1825, all non-GMO, no pesticides, none of that stuff. Dairy, no hormones, no antibiotics, and raw. 1825, how much seed oils? None. Now they're wrecking a very significant portion. In fact, 14.4%. I don't know how they come up with that number. And then added sugars. So what do we want to do about this? Well, How about talk about how did man actually evolve? What foods did he eat? What foods did he avoid? What have we done? What have we done to the food? Robert Lustig's book, Metabolical, I like it a lot. Metabolism, that's what happens to food in our body. Diabolical, he says that's what happens to food before our bodies. Make good choices, zealously inspect all things that you allow to enter your mind, your heart, your soul, and your body. You know what? We are what we eat. So why not make choices based on what humanity has done and what healthy people actually understand? And I'll say this again, I think people that are writing for the Lancet, definitely medically biased, probably drugged, probably eating garbage, probably dealing with chronic illness. Can't say that for sure. Why don't you talk to them and see where they are? What do we see in the US? Doctors drugged, chronic illness, and pushing it on their patients if they're in that system. This whole movement of functional medicine is taken off. And what is functional medicine? The opposite of dysfunctional medicine. And as always, I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful. So, what should we eat? How about like our ancestors ate? Eat real food, clean food, not too much, not too often, every color, every day, in a way that honors your physiology, your genetics, and your body goals, mostly plants. Enjoy this beautiful day.